In this episode, Ryan takes a property investor deep into their deals, the numbers, the deal structures, and the mindset you need to go from 9 to 5s with no money and no previous experience to make real money. I'm talking about over 6 figures a year from buying discounted properties, adding value, and refinancing them to pull 100% of your money back out and make money on the rent every month. This is known as BRR, buy, refurbish, refinance. When used correctly, you will make 6 figures a year and build a financial wall of security around you and your family. If you're looking for that aha moment, this talk will give you that realization, confidence, and the courage to give you everything you want. Mastermind on Mondays. Every Monday at 10 a.m, Ryan hosts a live mastermind session in the Facebook community group called the Property Crash Course. Get your burning questions answered around business, entrepreneurship, property investment, and more. Just post your question, problem, or challenge in the community group and tune into the live show called Mastermind on Mondays at 10 a.m.
Fantastic. So yeah, just to welcome Ashley Anderson on the podcast right now. It's just business. So I'm just going to hand it over to Ashley and just let him introduce himself, and then we'll go deep into some strategies and to talk about some other things to give you guys as much value as possible. So go for it, Ash, if you want to introduce yourself to the listeners.
Yeah, sure, by all means. Well, thank you for having me on the podcast. Really appreciate it. Yes,
welcome.
as Ryan just said, my name's Ash Anderson, and I'm in about 2 years now doing property and really enjoying it. And I've got a military background. I was in the Marines for a few years, and I'm actually currently serving in the RAF as a physical training instructor whilst building up my property company.
Brilliant. So at the same time, so you was in the RAF,
and yes, you was in the Marines to start.
In the Marines, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I started to learn about property really and do some digging when I was in the Marines. And yeah, what happened really was the squadron that I was a part of at the time was really intense in terms of sending us away for long periods of time.
Okay.
And my now wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, Natalie, she told me that she was pregnant with our first daughter.
Oh, fantastic.
And yeah. But basically, it meant that I went into work the next day and told my boss essentially that I was leaving one way or another. Because I wasn't prepared to stay, really, because I wanted to see my daughters grow up, which would have been really difficult where I was.
Oh, definitely. I can't imagine.
Yeah. So I transferred then to the RAF because I still needed the stability of income, and sort of military life is all I really knew, apart from doing sort of odds and sods before I joined the military, different jobs. But I wanted to stay in the military because of the stability that it offers. And so I looked into different jobs and I transferred essentially into the RAF as a physical training instructor, and that's what I'm still currently doing. So I'm in there about 3 years now. I've been in the RAF about 3 years. And
right, I see. So you're part-time there and you're investing?
No, I'm full-time there.
Oh, you're full-time there?
I'm full-time with the RAF, yeah, and sort of running the business at the same time, yeah.
And having a wife and having a daughter as well, so you are very busy.
2 daughters.
2 daughters now. Wow, fantastic. Look at that. So how far do you have to go for the full-time job then? Where do you go for that?
Yeah, so essentially when I was in the Marines, we were based away and we'd have to travel quite long distances sometimes. But now I'm in the RAF. It's not exactly a 9 to 5, but it's probably as close to a 9 to 5. My current position is probably as close to a 9 to 5 as you can get within the military, really. So I get to go home every night, which is why I transferred. Really, that was part of the reason. But yeah, I've got a 45-minute commute, just like most people in the mornings, and sort of the same on the way back. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
I see. Oh, that's brilliant. Talking about the obviously the military background, a long time ago, probably, when would it have been? Probably around about 2004, somewhere around there, we started to rent properties to the bases in Mildenhall, really? Lakenheath, trying to think what else they were called, all around that area in Norfolk, just on the outskirts of Bury St Edmunds. Yeah. Because we found a really good tactic, which was the bases, the Americans, when they look for property overseas before they even got here, they would have an allowance that you probably know based on how many stripes they've got,
Sure,
who
got it.
they
Yeah,
are, their
yeah.
position. So they used to just say like, I don't know, I'm a captain or a major for argument's sake, and their budget would be like £2,500 a month. So
Wow.
then they would just find letting agents in the UK and then just say, this is my budget. What have you got? So what we decided to do was just our whole business model was an agency catering for RAF bases in Mildenhall, Lakenheath, Honington, and we
Yeah,
would just find them properties before they got to the UK. But for example, something that might have rented for about, I don't know, say £1,200, we knew that if their allowance was 2,000, we would just give them a lot more value, like include the bills, pick them up from the airport, put a gardener in. So then we would just, if the property rented for say 1,000 or 1,200, their allowance was 2,000. We would just give them everything else they could think of, gardeners, drivers. So we would get the full 2,000, and we did that for a very long time, which
yeah.
worked really
Great
well.
business model.
It really did.
Mm.
Yeah, it really was. And then we went into, actually, that started us off to get into LHA, Local Housing Authority, because they offered a similar thing in and around London around about 2016. So then we thought we was onto something here. And then it was fantastic for cash flow. It really was.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it really was. Okay, so you're that busy. How do you find time for property as well then?
Well, it's difficult. That's the answer. It's difficult. Um, well, first of all, I've got a very understanding wife. I think that's plain to see. Uh,
Yeah,
we've got very strong reasons for doing why, sort of what it is that we're doing, which is essentially to provide for our girls. So, sort of neither Nat or I have got wealthy parents, and we weren't deprived by any stretch of the imagination. I wouldn't say that either of our families were poor, but they weren't affluent. And we just really wanted to provide a good start for our girls. Really, that's the driving force behind why we're doing what we're doing. And so,
well, that's brilliant.
yeah, yeah,
That's a huge why as well. Some people they just I just want more money, or I don't really want a full time job. But having that strong why and children, I've got three children myself, is enough to just keep pulling you through the hurdles, the barriers, the challenges, and
yeah,
it's
it is.
the driving force behind everything. So it doesn't get any stronger than that. So yeah, I completely understand that. So what have you got? Your wife is involved as well, Natalie, isn't she? In part of this, the property
She
side.
is indeed, yeah. She contributes lots and she helps whenever she can. But you will be able to sort of relate to our situation, I imagine. The reality of the setup in our house is that Nat does a lot of the housework and she looks after the kids a lot of the time because I'm still going to work full time, and there's things that need to happen in the property business. So the reality is that really I take care of lots of the business side, but something that Nat does do a lot of, and she does a fantastic job of it as well, is Nat runs our Instagram account, and that's what she's
Oh, really?
responsible for. Yeah, so she does a great
Right.
job
The
of that.
social media.
Yeah, but she obviously she allows me the time to be able to do things in the evenings and sometimes early in the mornings. So we both work just as hard as each other, just on slightly different things, really.
Right. That's ideal. That's a great partnership in that sense, isn't it? So things can keep
Yeah,
going while you're at work, and then it's ideal. Does she help out with like doing any sourcing, like finding your next deal or due diligence on your next deal?
yeah, yeah. She can do sometimes. I think Nat's claim to fame at the moment is that she was responsible for finding our very first property deal, which is arguably the most important. Um, and she actually helped to appraise the deal, and we both came to the same conclusion that that was going to be a no money left in property deal, and she found it, so that was great.
Oh, fantastic. That's brilliant. Tell me a little bit about that deal. Where did you find that one? Where was that first deal?
Yeah, so we operate in Telford. That's where all of our properties are, and that's sort of our stomping ground, and that's where yes, that's where we operate. So the first property was sourced from a local estate agent that we'd managed to build up really good rapport with, and we got a relationship with. and we must have been going in maybe twice a week for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, I think.
Okay, brilliant.
And one of the senior negotiators really took a shine to me in that. And we came in one day and they said, "Oh, we're just about to ring you guys. We found a great sort of property for you. So it's lucky that you've come in." And we was like, "Oh yeah, great. Show us about it." And it turned out that it was a repossessed flat.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, there was a bank sale basically, and the guy that was living in the flat just scarpened and sort of did a runner, and yeah, so they repossessed the flat, and they said that, we think that this is going to fit your model. We'd explained what it is that we wanted, which was essentially different ways to be able to add value, to be able to pull out a lot of the funds, and to be able to recycle those funds and to go again. So they said, "Look, we found this great place for you. It's a 2-bedroom flat in Telford. Um,
Yeah.
the bank or the lender, whoever it was at the time, they want sort of 55 grand for this flat, but we think it's going to be worth at least 75 once it's done." So we thought, well, yeah, it
Really?
sounds as though it ticks the boxes. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, we did all of our due diligence, checked it out, did the deal analysis, and because it was our first time, I remember as clear as day, we must have ran the deal at least 20 times, at least.
Just to make sure you
And
hadn't missed anything.
just about, yeah, every single time I was checking with Nat,
Yeah.
I was asking other people to have a look at it, and it was our
I
first
love
deal, right? So you got to get it right.
And you start to doubt yourself as well because you're
Yeah,
not sure it's a big
yeah,
amount of money and it could be great or it could be terrible. I know
yeah.
what you mean. Yeah, I think
Well,
that's
the first deal
exciting.
actually, me and Nat put our life savings into. We put every penny we had, and just as a bit of a side, we used investor finance to buy the first one, but we
Okay.
also contributed our sort of entire cash reserves. We put everything in because we
What for
wanted to show.
for the renovation costs, or do you mean for the deposit, or to show the investor you had money as well?
Well, I suppose really, look, we ended up buying the property in cash for 100% cash, and then we refurbed it with cash. So we didn't use any bank lending
Okay.
or any sort of facilities like that. But what we did do was we contributed to the pot essentially. So we worked out that we needed £60,000 really, and we contributed 10, and
Yeah.
um, and that was everything all in for us basically. Uh, so coming from a military background, you tend to operate sort of hand to mouth a lot of the time. You don't really save lots of money. We were never in business before. We didn't have business backgrounds, but we knew the importance of showing the investor that we were deadly
Yeah.
serious and that we backed ourselves. And that was a way that we could show the investor that we really meant business. And so that's what happened.
Oh, definitely. That's brilliant. So the investor, did you know him before, or did you just find him and then build a relationship with him by saying you want to buy property? And
Yeah, so
how did
I
you
was
find the
actually in
investor?
a really sort of privileged situation. It turned out that before we even got the investment, or before that we knew we were going to have the investment, we actually rang this investor who was a family member of mine, not for investment at all, but just for advice. So when we'd got to the point where we thought that we'd ran this deal the 20 times that we had, and we couldn't go
Yeah.
any further with it, and we were pretty certain it was going to happen, or work at least. Um, my uncle has pretty much spent his entire life in the financial industry in some quite
Okay.
senior
Good.
positions in sort of UK banks, and
Brilliant. Very useful.
yeah, I didn't really want to sort of make an idiot of myself before I went to him, so I got as far as I could go, and then I thought, look, I need to put it past the final check, which is Uncle Charlie, and yeah, that's it. So I rang him up and said, look, I've sort of found this deal. He knew what I was doing. Like, he knew what I was getting up to anyway. But I said, look, I found this deal. I'm 99.9% sure, if not 100% sure, it will work on the figures that I'm looking at. What do you think? And after the conversation, uh, which sort of felt a little bit like a court hearing and getting grilled,
Very
it
nerve
was about
wracking.
20 minutes. Yeah, it was really. He was asking me everything. But at the end of the conversation, essentially, he said, um, well, look, I'm happy. When do you need the money by? And so
Brilliant.
he became our first investor, and which was a really nice position to be able to invest with a family member and operate within the family. Was a really nice way to start.
Let me step in real quick. I share a ton of business and investment tactics on this show, and it's a shame that there's no interaction on a platform like this, which is why I've created a Facebook community group called Property Crash Course, where I get to answer all of your questions. So you just post a deal or post a question, and I'll show you where the money is in your deal or answer your question for you. So help me to help you in your business right now by asking me anything you need help with. Does that sound fair? Just go to Facebook and then search the groups and then type in Property Crash Course. Tell me about how you structured it. Was it through a limited company, or was it in your own personal name, or how did that work with the investor?
Yeah, so actually thinking about it, that was quite a long time ago now, but I remember exactly what happened. Initially, the property was bought in our own personal name, which
Right,
was
okay.
which was later transferred to a limited company. It's a bit of a sore subject to me, that actually, um, because I didn't actually get the right advice at the time, which is a little bit
Yeah,
painful looking back now, because we ended up having to pay stamp duty to
yeah,
transfer it across to the
yeah.
limited, which we didn't even have to do. But never mind, hey ho, we live and learn, don't we?
Yeah, and glad it happened on that first deal, not a £10 million development, and you got to pay the stamp
100%,
on that. So it's
100%,
better to make it,
exactly. Yeah,
55,000 instead of
yeah,
5.5 million.
yeah, yeah, quite
Yeah.
right. But the
Okay, so you
structure
bought
of the
it in
deal
your
was
name.
yeah, yeah. So the structure was a loan between me and my uncle, and the deal is that he gets his capital back when we successfully refinance the deal at the back end.
Okay, and then what did you do with whatever interest you agreed with him? Did you roll it up so he gets it in one lump sum, or did you have to pay him monthly?
Yeah, so it was rolled up. Yes, it was rolled up at the end. Yeah, which was actually a really nice thing to have to do because it just improves cash flow to the end of the deal, doesn't it? Of course.
Oh yeah, it does. Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, it was in your own personal name. Then you moved it to a limited company. So I suppose
Yeah.
the limited company, did you both just become directors?
No, we didn't. So that was my. So that was actually my property because when his capital got paid back to him, the property remained in my name. So I transferred it into my new limited company, and it's been there ever since. Yeah. So he's actually got nothing to do with my limited company. He's not a director. He just provides loans when needed, essentially.
Right, I see. So it basically worked out that when you transferred it from your name to the company, the deal had been done, it had been
Correct.
refinanced, and it was at
Correct.
that point when you
Yeah.
obviously sold it to the company in that sense, then he got his funds back. So
Exactly that.
he was gone. So now it sits in your portfolio in your company.
Correct.
I see. Brilliant. And what sort of loan to value do you get then, or did you get on that deal back then? Obviously, putting it into a company because it's lower than when you buy it in your own name, isn't it?
Yeah. So that was an 80% loan to value, which it's a topic that I think needs discussing because people that are just starting in property, I think, need to have quite a good understanding of loan to values and the risks that are involved. So
Yeah.
for us, we were actually we were very aware of the loan to value risk, and I think that for anyone listening to the podcast or watching the video that's new to property, I think it's important that you get a good grip on the risks because uh, if you were operating sort of back in 2008 when things started to go maybe slightly wrong with the back end of
Yeah.
2007 perhaps, and loans were getting called in because the loan to values were too high and that sort of thing. uh, I think that people should have an awareness that loans can get called in and mortgages can get called in. So I think for us, what was important for us was to get the capital back out of the deal so we could momentum invest and use that capital to go again should we find another suitable deal. But something that's just as important to us is keeping that the loan to value, keeping it comfortable. So initially we needed to get the funds back out, but we had a plan to be able to overpay the capital, to overpay the mortgage to a state where we were happy. Now for us, we're working towards getting that loan to value a lot closer to 70% than the original 80%. And I don't think that it's a good idea really to go too much above 80% these days anyway. Well, we wouldn't do that. That would be my advice. And that, for our circumstances, we wouldn't really want to go above 80%.
Now that makes sense. And lots of people did get caught out, exactly how you said, 2007, 2008. Northern Rock back then, we used to use them a lot from about 2001, where they had a funding line. It was very easy for investors and developers. Sometimes they would go up to 110% finance back then.
Madness.
It was unbelievable.
Absolute
People
madness.
pay you to buy property.
Yeah.
It's like, we'll pay you to buy a property. And some people did take advantage of that and went and bought all their, I don't know, Porsches and the Ferraris, because every one you buy, you're getting paid 10% back, and it was just madness.
Yeah.
So some people did that a lot with new build. And then when they realize they've got a higher loan to value, and then when they bought the property new build, it's fallen in value anyway because it was overinflated and they've got like a 30% deficit. So the second the interest rates changed and things like that, they just had no equity. They were upside down.
Yeah.
And, they just lost all of the properties that they, were paid to buy. So lots of those gurus and all those people just disappeared 2008, 2009, 2010. But, the banks do come back and ask for the money, especially with things that are happening now where valuations are being pulled, values are going down, and they're obviously, everything's changing and we don't know how far it's going to go right now. So that's really good advice for some people to not get caught up with this, get all of your money out and more money and cashbacks and stuff. That's just not a good model at all, because just dicing with death there.
That the deals that we've done, it just so happens that all of the deals that we've ever done, they've all been no money left in deals. And
that's brilliant.
And we've been able to spot that was going to be the case. But I think, it is brilliant, and it's something that we're really proud of. But I wouldn't do that at the detriment of lending too highly. Okay, and if I did have to lend at a certain loan to value to get the money out for whatever reason, then I would definitely have a plan in place to overpay that loan essentially to get it back down to comfortable as soon as possible. I wouldn't be buying the Ferraris. I wouldn't be buying the boats. I wouldn't be doing anything like that. I'd just be getting comfortable, because it's really important that we move forward on solid foundations.
Oh, definitely.
I want my company to last. I want this to be a legacy and something that I can hand down to my daughters. So I don't want to be giving them trouble. Basically, I want to give them a strong foundation to work on.
It gives me goosebumps when you're saying that. I'm not sure if you can see it about the legacy for your daughters and everything else, because I've got the similar thing, refocus with the children and the family and build something, that they can continue, and the name and everything else from making massive mistakes early on. So it gives me goosebumps when you say those things there. It really is really special. Yeah, it certainly is. So how long did that one deal take from when you actually completed to doing the work and then getting all your money back out, then on to the next one? How long was that window of completing, renovating, selling for the second time?
So that was essentially 6 months from buying it to getting the cash back out. Yeah, that was a 6-month deal. We've done deals that have been faster since. That one was bought through the estate agent, like I said, and it was a repossession. We've done a couple of faster ones actually. We did one recently that was a direct to vendor deal, which incidentally was a flat that was directly below the first flat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's in the same block, which is quite nice for us. Yeah,
brilliant.
And we just got chatting to the vendor. He was knocking about one day, and we just got chatting and just chewing the fat really. And he mentioned that he was a bit disgruntled because he wanted to move out, and we just started talking about it. And he said, "I've found a property that I really want to move into, but the estate agent can't sell my flat." And I was a bit like, I didn't even notice it myself. this is my neighbourhood round here. How come I don't know your place is for sale? And yeah, we got chatting, but essentially the estate agent was, well, you'll probably be aware of this, but some estate agents, not all of them, it's got to be said, but some estate agents will overprice properties and tell vendors what they want to hear just to get
Just to
their
get the
business,
instruction. Yeah.
just to get the instruction. And that's exactly what was the case here. So this poor guy's flat, they'd agreed was worth £75,000, which, if you remember back to the first deal, that was the value of the flat when it's in, well, pretty much brand new condition and just been
Yeah.
refurbished. Now,
Yeah.
unfortunately for this guy, his flat was in a worse state than the flat that we bought originally.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see how they've played him a little bit there.
Yeah.
So unfortunately for him, so I just explained and I just said, look, this is what we do. This is our company. This is what we've done upstairs. More to the point, come and have a look. And we showed him around and stuff. And because we've got a really good relationship with the tenants, and we try and keep a really good relationship with all of our tenants. We actually pride ourselves on that a lot. We think that's a really important part
Oh,
of what we
definitely.
do. But we managed to show him around. We explained, we showed him how we make our money, which I think is important, transparency. But we also showed him how we could help him. So we ended up buying his flat for cash because what was important to him was the speed of the transaction more than the price that he sold it for. So we were happy. We got a good deal. He was happy. He got to move into his sort of dream house, so to speak, a lot quicker that he'd found.
Brilliant.
So we ended up getting a second deal going direct to a vendor, which is something that we really enjoyed. The process was quick, and I think we did that. We were in and out of that one within, I think, 4 months from start to finish.
So just a light refurb, like kitchen, bathroom, carpets, decoration.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, there was no. So I call them invisible costs. So, so invisible costs to me are things that you might not necessarily see when you first appraise a property. If you walk in and you're viewing it, people that are just starting in property might not consider things like rewires because you can't see the wires in the walls. They might not
Yeah.
consider a full new plumbing system because all they see is, radiators. Sort of damp issues, wood rot, things like this. You can't see this stuff, but it all sort of adds up, doesn't it, into the cost of refurb, as you will be well aware. But this place was just mainly cosmetic, so we didn't have to do a lot of those things. Yeah, so that's why it's quite quick.
Okay, then 4 months on that one. Lots of people ask us all the times, oh, the 6 month rule, and then there's only certain lenders that enable you to refinance or move to a limited company before then. So what bank did you decide to use the end finance with?
Yeah, so that was with Precise.
Okay.
Yeah, that was with Precise Mortgage. Now, the 6 month rule, I tend to think that has gone through a bit of a transition. And it's not something that I am going to pretend to be an expert on because I'm not. But what I can talk about is my personal experience with it.
Sure.
And my experience is that the 6 month rule, essentially, how I understand it these days, how a lot of lenders are operating, that if you wait 6 months from when you own a place to when you refinance it, you'll just get a slightly better interest rate.
Yeah.
But that doesn't stop you refinancing before the 6 month period. But a bit of a caveat to that as well is that if you choose to refinance before the 6 month rule, in our experience, that the caveat to that is that you need to be able to show the work that you've done, and you need to be able to prove the value that you've added if you're asking for an uplifted value.
Yeah, I see. That makes sense. And lots of people keep asking us the same questions. It's just nice to hear it from somebody else who's actually in the trenches doing it,
Yeah,
not someone who's just selling like an how-to guide or an ebook to do it.
yeah,
That might have been to someone else's taste today for a free afternoon, and now they're selling something on how to do something theory-based, but with no real actually doing it like you're actually physically doing it and living it. So it's always good to hear other people's opinion to sort of put those people straight where they still have these questions. I think lots of people overcomplicate it. They try and make out that it's so difficult and so complicated when the reality is there is lenders that do it.
Yeah,
If
there
you're a
are lenders.
company and you prove that you've added value, etc., and the
Something that I
numbers
think,
still work.
yeah, something that I think as well that could potentially add value to people that are listening, that are considering a refurb. I think if you consider, I mean, I've just spoken about a 4 month um, sort of time period between owning the property and then going through the refinancing structure for it. But if you were to consider a standard refurbishment project, if there is such a thing, uh, you could quite easily cover the 6 month period just going through the normal channels. So I think once you purchase a property and you've got to go through the conveyance, okay, once that's transferred into your name, the the refurbishment, depending on what you're doing and what sort of property deal it is in the first place, could very easily go past the 6 month mark anyway. So I don't think that should be ever something that stops people that would like to refinance or at least sort of look into this model, because I think
Yeah,
the interest rate difference, I think off the top of my head, was something like zero point 0.2 difference or maybe zero point 0.3 difference. But so in the
minimal.
grand
Yeah,
scheme of things, it's just nothing. It's just minimal.
nothing. Yeah,
So yeah, that shouldn't stop it. I think maybe the amount of lenders that are uh, that will do it in under 6 months is maybe slightly less, but we definitely had a choice and we had a pool of lenders to choose from. So it wasn't as if it was just precise. We had a pool, and I think that they're becoming more open, or they did before the current situation, to be able to lend in that way.
yeah. No, that's ideal, and lots of people listening will get lots of value from that because they it's the common questions. Oh, we can't do this because we got to wait, and if we buy it in cash, then we can't get our money back out, etc. So it's really good to listen to your experience of actually doing this for what options are available. Um, yeah, that's really ideal. It's really useful. So that property, the one you bought before, you got for 55,
Yeah,
and the one in the building they were asking for about 70 odd, and you got that for how much? Did you say?
yeah, we got that for 50,000 in the end, 50.
Wow, you go for 50, so even less than the first one.
Yeah,
Brilliant. And then when you did the work, what was it worth? The 75 again, around that figure?
yeah. So bob on 75,000. We knew exactly what the banks were going to value at, or the lenders were going to value the property at, because of course we had the one upstairs. So you can't really get a better comparable than the flat upstairs, can you?
No, that's ideal. Did you go back to the same bank by any chance? If you already had one in the building, was it?
No, we didn't. And the reason that we didn't was because the very first property that we refinanced with was the mortgage works.
Okay.
And they have a stipulation where they don't like to um, they don't like to lend on more than 25% on flats in the same block, essentially. So if we were to have gone through them, then we would have obviously have had 66% of the flats in the block. So they didn't want to be overexposed.
Would have
So
been
we
a
were,
challenge.
yeah, so we forced to go through a different lender. But like I said, there are plenty out there that you can choose from.
Yeah, definitely. And is it the same thing on the end? It goes into your company when you finish the limited company that holds the property in the portfolio, or is it separate companies for each separate deal?
No, so we actually, so we're happy to keep them in the same company, depending on the sort of thing that we're doing. So you'll be aware yourself, certain activities are classed from a tax perspective in different ways. So flipping properties is generally classed as a trading business, or it can be classed as a trading business. So I wouldn't personally. I mean, I think it's fair to say that you should speak to your accountant about this, and I'm by no means giving tax advice to anybody here. But in my situation, I've spoken to my accountant, and we decided that if the property deals were going to be structured in a similar way, and we were purchasing to hold them and to rent them out, that they could be done, that we could purchase them and hold them in the same company. Now, whether we would always want to do that is a different issue, depending on the size of the deal, maybe the location, what we're going to be using it as. all of these things come into play. But essentially, buying properties, I mean, as basic as you can get it, buying properties, refurbishing them, refinancing them, and renting them out, that sort of activity can legally and from a tax purposes be done in the same company.
Yeah, it certainly can. What we keep getting actually is people asking questions saying they've got blemishes on their credit file, or they've got, I don't know, maybe a county court judgment. Can they still, from your experience, buy in a company? Can they still buy the property in a company because it's a separate entity to them?
Uh, well, there's not something that I'm an expert in because I've never had
Yeah.
to. I've never had to tackle the situation myself. But something that I could add to the question, I suppose, or at least the statement, would be the fact that when you start a brand new limited company, the lenders are looking at you and your history because the company hasn't got a history. So I think that first and foremost, I think anyone that's wanting to buy anything and sort of utilize any credit product, I think it's important that you give some attention to your credit file. And it's something that if you've got the ability uh, to be able to buy into a subscription to get your eyes on that monthly, I think it's a good thing, and you should cast your eye over it regularly. Even seasoned investors should keep an eye on their credit file because the smallest thing can blemish that. But in answer to your question, I think that if you're going to start a brand new limited company, it's something that you would need to speak to a really good broker about, because I've been told in the past that there are products out there to suit people with different circumstances, but it's not something that I personally know about, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, I understand. That's really useful because, yeah, they're asking lots of questions about if they've never done it before, with no history. And obviously, we normally suggest they partner with somebody else because some banks will want to see a track record. And the same if they've got poor or low credit or even bad credit, they could partner again with somebody else, like a mortgage host, which is something that I had to do when I bought my first property when I was
Sure.
20 years old, back in the year 2000, because I was working. I couldn't prove my income at that point, or I had the accounts for the lender when everyone could get self-cert mortgages. So I sold two cars that I had. One was an RS Turbo, a red one.
Oh,
One was a
yes, I love
Volvo
RS
Calibra.
turbos.
And,
That's a
if
blast
you
from
had
the
one of
past.
those back then, I know back in the year 2000 or 99, if you had one of those, you was the man. You was like rich. You had an RS Turbo, and
Well,
I
I'll
had
tell you
that
what,
and a
if you've got
Calibra.
one of those now, you're rich.
Oh yeah, because that's what they're worth. They're antiques now, aren't they? Collectors.
Yeah, they're
So I
worth a
sold
lot, yeah.
both of those, and I used a mortgage host just to get the mortgage to buy this flat for £42,500. Put that down as a deposit. Got an investor just like you, so it all went in their name. I did all the work, and then we refinanced it and then sold it for 85,500 after buying it for 42. So that's how I
Wow.
got started. No credit, didn't even have a bank account or credit card at college. So I
Hey,
did
you've
more or
got
less
to do what you've
exactly
got to do, haven't you?
what you've done. Yeah, definitely. So I didn't even know then. It was like, oh, that's an investment strategy. Get a mortgage host. It was just, can you buy it in your name and I'll just give you the deposit and then I'll give you the money back when it's done. Didn't know, and that's like a tactic now. Mortgage host, get a mortgage host. But there you go. That's ideal. So what deal are you working on now? Or what was your last deal?
Well, the last deal was something slightly different to the conventional model that we sort of follow in our company, and but this is quite close to my heart, really, because it's about pivoting and it's about being adaptable. So there's a lot of people that talk about what strategy they follow or what model they utilize to invest. But something that I find really powerful is the ability to be able to pivot and be able to adapt to different circumstances.
Especially right
So,
now, yeah.
especially right now, yeah. So maybe if I give an example here, uh, this will sort of paint a picture about what I'm talking about. So, so I go to the local property auctions in my area.
Okay.
Um, I don't always go to purchase something, but I like to attend. Sometimes I go to buy something if there's something I'm specifically after, but other times I'll just go to attend and see what's going on. I think it's good experience. just to get in the rooms and see what everyone else is doing, and just see how things go. And I think that people just getting into property, that's not a bad thing to do, because I think that just the same as going out and viewing properties and viewing a few and meeting estate agents and just getting your face out there and having conversations, I think it's all good stuff. So this particular time was one of those times. There was an auction on, and I just went to go and see what was going on, see what sort of properties were getting sold that day. And I noticed that there was a property right at the end of the auction that, in my opinion, was in the wrong auction,
Oh yeah.
because it was in an area that the rest of the properties in that auction, basically, it was in the wrong area. It was miles away. And so I thought, well, this is interesting. What's this property doing in this auction? So I kept my eye on it, and it was compared to the area that I normally invest in, it was a lot more. The area was more sort of affluent. The property prices were a lot higher, and I
Okay.
thought, well, this is going to be interesting. Let's see what this goes for. So this was a 2-bedroom bungalow, which was in Solihull, which is near Birmingham, and the book price was 280,000, and the equivalent bungalow in the area that I invest might be, say, 120, 130, 140 maybe. And I thought,
Okay.
this is suspicious. What's going on here? So we waited for the end of the auction, and there was no interest in it whatsoever. It just didn't sell. There was not even a bid. And I thought, okay, well, this is going to be something I'll look into tomorrow. So, well, in actual fact, that same night, I went home and got on the internet and did a very brief appraisal of the property and had a look at it. And I thought, this is crazy. This property is worth about 350,000, 340,000, something like that. What's going on? So I rang up the agent next day, who I've got a really good relationship with, because she sells properties in my area, and it's
Okay.
it's a relationship that we've built up. And so I rang her up and I said, right, what's going on with this one then? And she said, oh, the vendor's just not happy at all. It's been through the auction 3 times and hasn't sold. Okay,
Wow.
so yeah, so alarm bells started to go off in my head. I was thinking, right, and so this guy must be desperate to sell this place, or there might be a deal to be done at least. So, so I said, well, why is it in this auction? And she said, well, he was hellbound on getting it through this auction. So I thought, well, who am I to question what's going on then, So I said to her, look, if I was to be able to make a cash offer for this place today, what do you think you would be open to a deal? And she said, if you were to offer on this place a reasonable amount, I'm pretty sure he would be open to accepting, because he's been left the property by his parents and he doesn't want it. He lives nowhere near the property. He just wants rid of it. So I did a bit of deeper sort of deal analysis, and we came up with a figure of 240,000 in cash. So we rang them back and said, look, if he's willing to accept this, we will stand by our word and we'll buy it for 240,000. And she rang me back within 10 minutes and said, yeah, that's fine, he'll accept it.
Fantastic news.
So, but the major difference really was sort of twofold. The first one was that it was a totally different area for us, and it was a different price point compared to the prices that we were used to. But the second thing was, the reason that we were going to buy this property was specifically to flip it on. So
Okay.
the properties that we'd previously done, we went in to the deal with a view to rent it out on the back end. That is initially that's predominantly our model, but we knew that wouldn't work in this area due to the yields. But we knew that there was going to be a big uplift in the resale value, so that's why we bought it, and we managed to make £65,000 £65,000 uplift on that from the resale.
Fantastic. Look at that. That's brilliant. Did you do any work to it? Did it need a lot of work or just light cosmetics?
Just like cosmetics, to be honest with you. We chose to do a couple of things that maybe we didn't have to, but we thought that it would add value to the target market audience. So we knew that our target audience were going to be sort of maybe older people or people that were retiring and they were going to be specifically looking for a bungalow. The demographic in that area was very much the demographic I've just described. And we sort of had the opinion that if we can do sort of work above and beyond what may need to be done, that's going to give the potential buyer the warm and fuzzy feeling that they really have not got anything to do for a long time. So that's really
that's
what we did.
ideal.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then how did you? That's a big jump from the 55 to 240, isn't it? How did you finance that one?
So that was with an investor finance as well. So for me, really, the amount of zeros on the end of a deal is largely irrelevant. I know that I touched on the fact that it was a different price point to the price points we've been used to, but this brings me back to the original point about being adaptable and being able to pivot. That was a deal that was essentially that I was made aware of by going to the auction. So what were my choices? Well, my choices were to say, well, that's not what we do. That's not what we do. I'm not interested. I'm not going to pursue that. Or that is a very good deal. I can see it in plain sight. It's right in front of me. Let's do it. So the fact that it was a bit more money, well, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, the investor was going to make a good return, and so will we.
Make sure you've subscribed because tomorrow you'll get nothing but the truth on Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, you'll get nothing but the truth. This offensive and explicit episode covers current issues, trending topics, and more that will punch you in the face with the truth. If you can't handle that, don't listen, because Ryan does not hold back. And if you're up to no good, we're watching.
And where did you find an investor, or where do you start looking for an investor for something like that? If somebody else hasn't got the money and they want to do what you're doing after listening to this, where would they start by finding someone like you found multiple people now, which is great?
Yeah, sure. So, well, actually, I've literally just done a Facebook Live on this, so the topic is fresh in my mind, really. And so, I think
Okay.
first and foremost, it's about getting yourself out there and speaking to people, and not necessarily being pushy or selling to someone, or maybe even selling an idea to someone, but it's just making people aware about what you do. So there's a term that, well, a couple of years ago I was made aware of, which I'm sure you'll be aware of, which is selling through. So rather than selling to someone, you sell through. And the way that I sort of bring this into my property business is I tell people about what I do for other investors and the opportunities that I provide for other investors and what we do. And you tend to find that when you talk to people about those things, that can spark interest in the people, the person that you're actually talking to. Then before you know it, you start getting asked questions. Well, how can I get involved in something like that? Are you looking for other investors at the moment? How can I help you? And I think that that's a really powerful way of getting yourself out there, whether it be on social media, whether you're going to networking events, or you're just speaking to your friends and family, whatever it is. I think just being transparent about what you can offer people and what your company and what you're all about, before you know it, you'll start to have people coming to you.
Yeah, that's really useful for everybody listening or watching this, because their first hurdle is, well, how the hell will I find the money or find someone to give me the money? But it could be at any event you're at or a business function, even somebody sitting
Anything.
next to you,
It can be anything.
anywhere. And then you
It
just
can be
ask the right
someone sitting
question.
on the train. Like, why not speak to people? Just speak to everyone. I mean, the other day, um, there's a petrol station that I pulled up in, and when I pulled up into the petrol station, there was a Lambo that was parked in the petrol station, and so I thought, well, I'm going to park next to that Lambo. I'm going to wait for this guy or girl, whoever it is, to come out, and I'm just going to spark up a conversation with them. So that's exactly what I did. Now, some people might think, well, that's well out of my comfort zone speaking to strangers. Uh, but as far as I'm concerned, I see most things as opportunities now. And I think if that guy's driving a Lambo, right, then why not spend 5 minutes talking to him? At least just ask him about what he does, anything. And it turned out that guy was in property as well, in the same area that I invest in. And
Brilliant.
Yeah, and we sort of had a chat for 5 minutes. We swapped contact details. Now that might not ever sort of materialise into anything, but if I hadn't have spoken to him at all, then it had 0% chance of going anywhere. But now, like, it's worth a chat, isn't it?
It is definitely. I mean, I read a book quite a few years ago called The Luck Factor from
Okay.
an author called Richard Wiseman, and it's exactly that. It's anything anybody wants is only something like 2 to 5 people or conversations away.
Yeah.
So it just pulls all the barriers down to say anything you really want is there on the bus in those people, or there on the tube with those people you don't speak to, or there in the queue when you're queuing for a taxi, the same taxi you get every day to work, or when you're in the reception of your office building. Those 2 to 5 people, everything you want is there. You might want money. Oh, that person deals with that. You might want mortgage finance. Oh, that person is the biggest broker or runs this company. They're just there. So you have to just get all of that out of the way and just start speaking to strangers. I mean, I've been doing it for a long time, and I find people in the Argos queue. I'm in Argos and I'm just queuing for something, talk to the person behind, find out they're into property and they're an investor, and then they're looking for this or they're struggling with that. It just happens all the time wherever. It's
It's
the
so
best way.
true.
The fantastic. It
Yeah,
really
it's so
is.
true. And I think that maybe people that struggle with the concept of that, because a lot of people, I don't know whether it's a generational thing or just people these days, but people tend to be maybe slightly more closed off than they did years ago. Well, maybe that's my observation. I don't know what you think, but I think that a good way to get over that, or maybe to help yourself just start to speak to people wherever you are, you can start on social media. Because like I've just been sat in my office before we jumped on this podcast. I was actually sat in my office doing a live, and when I came off the live, there was 200 people that had viewed it. Now,
Oh,
to
that's
stand up
fantastic.
in front of 200 people and talk about what I just spoke about in my live is a totally different thing than just talking into your laptop screen or talking into your phone. But you're still getting the message out there, and you can just practice
Yeah.
talking and getting and the way that you want to get your point across, and then it becomes a lot easier when you speak to people face to face. Yes, that's what I've found anyway. I mean, I've never had a problem talking to people, but I can appreciate that some people are maybe a little bit more reserved than others.
Yeah, reserved, and then some people it comes down to just like their own insecurities, and until they can get past that. But then it just builds confidence. You talk to one stranger, and then you just go to the next level. Then you just think, oh, I can now approach that person. They're not as scary. Then it goes, and then before you know it, you're in the queue at the restaurant, at the bar, if they ever open restaurants and bars again. And then you're talking to everyone. Your contacts have gone from no one to everyone. You're like now the mayor of the town because you can call this one who's got money, that one wants deals, this one does finance. And it's like just from your life can go, that's normally the answer to most things. The
Yeah,
network, isn't it?
it
You
sure
don't
is.
get it.
Yeah,
And then talk to, it's
yeah.
normally the answer. Um, Brilliant. So tell me about this deal. Now you've come obviously a long way from the first deal that you done to now doing this one for nearly £250,000. How did you structure this one? Was it the same as the first one? You buy it in your name and then it goes to a company, or did you do something different with this investor because it was a lot more money?
Yeah, so this was slightly different. We did a JV on this, and so essentially the entity is going to be closed down when the property's sold, and then, well, potentially, sorry, excuse me, potentially, depending if we find another deal. But this was very much separate. Excuse me. But this deal was very much separate to our previous deals.
Okay. So did you form a company straight away and then loan the company the money, or did you just buy it in joint names as personal people?
Yeah, so this was through a company. Yeah, so this was two directors and one company, essentially. So the investor then made a loan to the company which bought the property, and then we're essentially going to realise the capital gain when we sell it. We're going to crystallise the profit straight away.
Brilliant. And if you're doing these deals with somebody that you don't know, like say you met them with the Lamborghini, and then the guy was like, actually, yeah, after a few months, we'll do something, I'll put the money in. Do you have just the company? And lots of people are asking, do you have any other agreement that you have to have with them as well? Or is it just they loan the money to the company with that document and then it buys the property? Or is there any other agreements you have to have, like a joint venture agreement that says you get 60% for argument's sake, they get 40?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a number of ways that you can structure these deals and these arrangements, but I think that typically, if you're going to start a limited company, a shareholders agreement and a JV agreement is probably the most common agreements that you would need. But you would need to seek advice from a solicitor because everybody's situation is going to be different, and there's no, like what might be sort of applicable for my situation might not be applicable for your situation. But essentially, in terms of look, I think something that's important there is, from the investor's point of view, just ever so slightly off tangent here, but it's about security as well for the person putting the money in. So when there's a director that's in the company, they can obviously have first charge on that property. Whereas if you're going to utilise a mortgage, for instance, then your lender's going to get first charge. But if you're utilising 100% of private investment finance, then that's where their security can come from in the deal, which I think is quite a topical thing if we're talking about structuring JV sort of deals. And some people listening or watching might be thinking, well, that's a bit risky for one person to put all their money in. Sort of into a company where there might be shareholders agreements and shares that are split in certain percentages, but essentially you can have a first charge over the property that's purchased with that finance.
Yeah, that's really useful for everybody listening because they're all asking similar questions about the things they haven't done yet. And what I've always said to them is what we tend to do is just sit down with the investor if we're using someone else's money and just a blank piece of paper. And we just say, what do you want? What do you want? Well, I need this. Okay, put that there. What do you need? Well, I want to make sure my money's safe. Okay, you get the first charge. And then you sit down for an afternoon, that's done, and you just take it to the solicitor. That's what we say to them. Now take it to the lawyer and make it, legal. So it all works and
Yeah,
everyone's
exactly.
happy.
Yeah, so you do a heads
Yeah.
of terms, which is essentially what
Yeah.
that blank piece of paper is. And this is the absolute beauty of working with a private investor over a bank or a more conventional
Mm,
lender, because you are starting with a blank piece of paper, and it is essentially that. Whereas if you walk into a bank, their terms and conditions are presented to you, and you either
yeah.
take it or you don't take it. Whereas this is very much a mutually beneficial agreement, and you can sometimes quite easily and quite quickly get to a point where you're both happy with the agreement, and then you just send off your heads of terms to the solicitor, like you just said, for them to cross the T's, dot the I's, and then it all becomes official.
Yeah, that's it. Lock it away in the safe. Everybody's happy. Now let's just get on to dealing with property and just making some money. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's ideal. So what are you focusing on now? Have you got another project in the pipeline or something you've already started or you're looking at something else?
Well, we're appraising a couple of deals at the moment. Nothing that we've moved on at the moment. Um, so, I mean, a few people have said to me, because we've always done no money left in deals with the properties that we've retained, is that our sort of USP, so to speak? Are we always going to be doing deals where there's no money left in? And the short answer to that really is no, because if you did that, then your progress would be reasonably slow, because it stands to reason that that there's not loads of those deals out there, and if they were, then they'd be getting snapped up quite quickly. So we are going to be doing deals where we leave a certain percentage in. Um, Something I think that we're quite keen on is to keep to a 25% return on cash employed figure. I wouldn't really want to go any lower than that. So they're the sort of deals that we're appraising. Um, so we're still looking at the buy to let model, still looking at the BRR model, where we buy a property, we refurbish it, and then we refinance it out. We're starting to look at maybe slightly different projects that would follow a similar structure. So maybe sort of blocks of flats now. So we buy multiple units in one rather than single dwellings.
Yeah.
Um, we've started to look at a couple of smaller commercial buildings, maybe up to like 3,500-4,000 square foot, that we can create these single dwelling units in, and then refinance and then retain that building and rent out those single units to residential people. So that's the sort of thing that we're doing at the moment.
That's ideal. And I think lots of things are changing, aren't they, with the market and some valuations and a bit of a correction. So some
Very
people
much
are
so.
just sort of sitting back at the moment thinking, well, even if I get 20% discount now and do all the work, maybe it might be worth 10, 15, 20, 25% less in 6 months' time. So people are just slowing down a bit or looking for much bigger deals where there's a lot more meat on the bones. Would you say you're doing the same thing at the moment? Just seeing where the market is, assuming it's going to fall a bit, or are you still happy just to proceed right now?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a mixture of the two. So my opinion is, well, first of all, no one knows exactly what's going to happen. I think that's fair to say. But my personal opinion is that we're going to struggle to not have a very slight correction. Just the fear factor alone, in my opinion, is going to drive prices down slightly. People might be thinking that they need to get their property sold now rather than wait for a further dip. And if people aren't buying, there's going to potentially be a slight oversupply, which is going to drive prices down in the coming months. I don't think it's going to be an extended correction, in my opinion. I think it might last for a few months, and there's definitely going to be some good buying opportunities to be had. But I think, just linking back to one of my previous points about being adaptable to the situation and being able to pivot, we definitely haven't stopped looking for property and property deals. That's something that we will always do. I think it's important that you apply your own criteria to each deal now. So I've been speaking to vendors. We've just started a Facebook advertising campaign for getting in front of vendors, for people that want to sell their properties. And I think it's about managing expectations, and it's about educating people that are potentially trying to sell. And there are countless situations where people are advertising their properties still, even now, for what they would have been worth 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah.
And I think it's about managing expectations, just showing people what's going on. The economy, no doubt, is going to have some sort of recession. I mean, just again, no one knows exactly what's going to happen, but I think that some sort of recession is imminent. I don't think that we can get away from that. And of course, with a recession, will come the fall in house prices to a certain extent. So in answer to your question, yes, we are still looking and we are still appraising deals, but I think you've just got to be realistic and just take a sort of a whole market approach to what's going on. So we won't be buying deals where we don't think there's going to be a decent margin that's able to soak up the inevitable fall.
Yeah. So flipping is with a bit more caution just at the moment, unless you've got the massive margins.
Yeah, for me, I think that flipping's maybe one of the models that needs to be treated with the most caution. I think for me, I wouldn't look at flipping a property now at the moment, unless, I mean, just off the top of my head, I mean, if I was offered a property that was potentially for 50% of what it was worth a few months ago, then I might consider it. But I think anything more than that, because of course you've got to build in your margin that you want, your profit margin when you sell it as well, and you've obviously got to take into consideration your refurbishment costs and how you're going to add that value. So for me, yeah, flipping is generally out for the time being, at least for a few months, in my opinion. If we could get properties that were that we could add value to and that we could retain through the dip, then I don't think it's as important. But something to remember as well, of course, is that the deals that we've done in the past where we've refinanced on the back end, we're also being cautious about that now because lenders are going to be more cautious. So I think it's about just as just as we have to manage expectations with people that are trying to sell their properties or to offload them. I think it's also about managing the expectations of investors as well at the same time, and just saying, look, we've got these deals. They're good deals for you to invest in if they are good deals for the investor to invest in, but you might not be able to draw all of your money out for these reasons for this period of time. And as long as they're comfortable with the way the market's going, and if they've got the capital to be able to ride the dip in the market, then there's no reason why we can't continue to invest.
Yeah, that's really useful, and lots of listeners will get some huge value from that. Definitely to approach some of those tactics with a bit of caution right now, instead of just jumping all in now for flipping, and they could lose all of their money or all the profit potentially if the worst happened in the market. Tell me about Ricky Gervais.
Oh, what a strange question. He's well, I suppose I grew up listening to him. I watched The Office as a big part of my childhood, I suppose, and I just sort of stumble across some of his quotes, sort of sometime, which no doubt you're referring to. Maybe one of my posts recently was quite interesting. But yeah, I love his outlook on life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. It's just one of our researchers that gets everything prepared for the podcast and the interviews and everything else. Just came across it somewhere. But yeah, I mean, Ricky Gervais, I've liked him for a long time. He's a cool guy. He really is. Have you been to see him anywhere?
No, not in person. I've seen all of his material. I've watched all of his stuff, but I've never seen him in person. But I just tend to share a lot of his beliefs and values and things like that, so I can relate a lot to him.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's a good guy. So where are you going with Primal Property? Where is it heading now?
Well, we're going to try and stay true really to our values, our company values. So what we're aiming to do at the moment is to invest in simple models that we can create quality products out of, and sort of offer investors effective returns on their money. So that is what we're about. We don't necessarily need to do anything fancy. From an investment point of view, I think that there's a lot to be said for keeping things simple, for keeping structures simple, for keeping deals simple. The sort of properties you're investing in, keeping those simple. I just think that it's a really easy way to go about business. I mean, the sorts of deals might evolve and change in time, just like everything does. But we try and keep things as simple as we can. We always try to deliver quality products. In our investment portfolio, in the properties that we've retained over the years, we've had zero voids, got 0 days. We've never had a day of any voids. We've never missed any rent payments. We've retained our tenants, and I think that's sort of in no short part due to the quality that we deliver, really. So we're going to continue to do that. There's something that we always think about as a company, and I like to refer to a bell curve, a quality bell curve.
Okay.
So when you're looking at any product, and this sort of goes for most industries, not just property, but you'll tend to find that the products that are offered that are of quite a low quality, there's not as many of those being offered. Most of the products within that marketplace are going to fit between the mediocre range, so there'll be quite a lot of offerings within the mediocre quality range, and then it will dip off again. So there's not many products that are being offered in the really high quality range. So something that we aim to do is to basically over deliver on quality. That's something that's important to us. We feel as though if we do that, then we're going to be around for a long time. And we don't necessarily have to overcharge for that quality either, because you can deliver quality in different ways. But quality is a massive thing to us, like quality to our tenants, communication, the physical product itself, the rental property. But yeah, look, we feel as though delivering quality is important. And by doing those two things, by keeping it simple, by delivering quality, we can deliver effective returns for investors. So that is what we're doing. That's what we're up to. That's what we're always going to be about. And we're looking for more property deals and more investors to push the business forward.
Fantastic. So anyone listening to this, wherever they find it on social, on the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., any investors, how would they contact you if they want to get involved, want to invest some money, want to do some deals or JVs with you? How would they find you?
Well, I think a great place for them to start would be our website, which is primalproperty.co.uk. There's sections on there for investors to have a look at. There's all of our sort of portfolio and deals that we've done on there for them to check out. There's a specific investor page on them on there for them to check out. But incidentally, that website is good for not only investors but for people that want to get into property. We're recently creating one of our big aims this year is to create a really, really valuable resources page, which is going to be free resources for people that want to get into property. And there's going to be stuff that they can download and sort of listen to and get into on there, which will be free for everybody to use. So yeah, the website is something that we're quite proud of, that we're ramping up at the moment. And then we're on all the social media sort of channels as well. Facebook is
your name or Primal Property?
Yeah, so you can find me on both. Yeah, you can find me on both. So I'm under Ash Anderson. And if you wanted to find the company, it's facebook.com/Primal Property. Like I said earlier, we've got an Instagram account, which Nat runs, who does a great job of that. And that's instagram.com/Primal Property Ltd. They can find us on there if Instagram is what floats their boat. And we've got a YouTube channel as well, which I run. I make some videos on if people want to check out some educational stuff. And there's a few videos I've done on there specifically about no money left in property investing. And the shortest link to that I can offer is youtube.com/C/Primal Property, and you'll find us there.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that's brilliant. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on here today to just go through some of your deals, give as much value to the audience as possible, the listeners, hopefully some investors, some people come across to your page and find out a bit more and, maybe do some JVs with you as well. That would be ideal. Anything you'd like to add before we wrap this interview up? Anything at all?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for having me on. I think it's great what you're doing. I think if anyone wants to know about business or how to get into it, it's a great podcast to listen to. I'll be listening to all of your episodes now, no doubt. And just thank you for having me on. Really appreciate your time.
Brilliant. No, I really appreciate it as well. It's been a pleasure, and we'll definitely catch up again when you've got some, some different, tactics. We're going through different deals, come out the other end, and bigger projects and just different things happening. We'll jump on an episode again and just have a catch up and see, what's happened in that period, where you are now, what you're doing, and anything else you can help other people with, because there's lots of value they'll get out of this episode, definitely. So really pleased.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. Well, that means that I need to go and put some hours in then and go and find some more deals, doesn't it?
It does. It certainly does. All right.
Cool. Well, thank you for having me. Thanks again.
You're welcome. It's been great to have you on the show. I'll talk to you soon, Ash.
Okay.
All right then. Bye-bye.
Bye.
He's a #1 Amazon bestseller. He's an NLP manipulator. He's a property course seller. He's a Lamborghini driving multi-millionaire property guru. Forget that same old boring I am me narcissistic podcast format, because nobody gives a f***. This podcast is all about you. So I'm taking these few seconds to thank you for subscribing, to thank you for leaving your 5-star reviews, and thank you for sharing this show with all of your friends. My team and I will keep bringing you these episodes and answering all of your burning questions in my Facebook community group called Property Crash Course. If you can just keep telling all of your friends about this show.